Watch me build an amazing landing page using AI for my business. In this video, I'm rebranding my website, CodeSpring, and we're building everything from scratch using AI. For this, we're using a tool called Cursor. Now in this video, I want to talk about how I actually reference specific files in the composer and different images in order to get the job done that I'm looking to work on. So in this case, I want to actually redesign this specific area here. If I come to my app down here on the left-hand side, we have the page.js. And scroll through here, and this is all of the code for the page that you saw. But if we come into the components folder, I actually have a techstack.jsx file, and this is actually this section here. Now, because I'm working on this section here, when I'm talking to the composer, I want to give it access to the file that I'm working on. So in this case, I've given it detailed instructions on what I want it to do. So step 1, we're going to make the squares smaller. Step 2, we're going to make them clickable. And then step 3 is quite an exciting one. Because we're actually building using AI, when I click these buttons, I want it to show a separate tab. But I also want to write the text that shows up when I click these tabs. So as part of the instruction, I've given it some copywriting advice on exactly what it needs to write in the tabs that show when I click those buttons. Now, for those of you who haven't got context or don't quite know what I'm doing, don't worry and don't get confused. There's plenty of tutorials on my YouTube channel which will teach you a lot of this stuff. But essentially what we're doing here is using a chat function to basically tell the AI model what to write. It will go ahead and write the code, and we just act as a software engineer explaining to it. But if you need more help, you can go to the link down below in the description and come to my CodeSpring live class. We do them regularly. They're completely free, designed to help you learn how to build your MVP using AI. The link for that is down below in the description, and it will give you the extra help that you need to get started. The thing I'm going to do is actually just submit this message. So now we've sent that message to the AI, it's going to go ahead and look at those files, interpret the information that I've given it, and then write the code that it needs. You can see that Cursor has now actually edited that tech stack file, and it looks like it's actually created these sections that we need to show up once we click the buttons. You can see it's then gone ahead and applied the changes here. All we need to do now is accept those changes. And there we have it. When we come back to the app, we have a much better design. You can see everything looks like I described. And now when we click on each section, we have detailed information about the tech stack. Now obviously this now needs some extra design help, but you can really see how you can quickly start to iterate on the design that you've created. Now the next thing I want to do is change the design of this area here. And I kind of want this area to look like a code base area, kind of like what we have up here, because obviously we're teaching people how to code using AI. So I think it would be cool if it looked like a code IDE. So I've given it an example of some code IDE area, which kind of looks cool. And now we're going to tell it to change the drop down to look like that. All I've said is I want to change the style of the card that comes out of the button in the tech stack when pressed. The next thing I want to do is actually create a separate UI component for this area here, rather than having it hard-coded into the tech stack component. The reason for that is it just gives me more control over the design changes. So again, I've given it 3 different steps. 1, we're going to create a new component from the drop-down. And again, I've tagged this file here. Secondly, which is very important, if you find the AI is hallucinating a lot, it's probably because you're not giving it clear enough instructions. So go in and say something like, don't edit the UI design of the tech stack squares. I don't want to change the design of these. I've finally got these looking kind of like what I want. There's still some changes I need to make, but I only want to create this new area here. Finally, I've given it some information about the design style of this new component that I want it to make. Now, before I go ahead and do any instructions, I'm just going to go ahead and resync the index so the code has the up-to-date information on the code, and then we're going to send this back to the AI. And there we have it. So you can see it's actually created this little IDE section which looks like code, which I think is pretty cool. Obviously, we've got some issues with the numbering of the lines. So what we're going to do is we're just going to send it a screenshot. And you can see here, if we scroll up, it should have created a new design component. And it's called it the Tech Info panel, which we can see here. So again, we're going to come back. We're going to come to Features. We're going to resync the index. And part of the reason why we want to create these separate components is so we can clearly tell the AI where things are going wrong. In this case, we see that the numbers are overlaying these pills here. But if it was all in the same file, it would be very hard to tell the AI which bit of the code we're actually referencing or talking about here. But in this case, what I've said is actually the tech info panel, the lines, those numbers, are actually overlapping the tech stack. Okay, so I can actually tell it the code here is overlaying this code here, which means I can't click on the button, so it can go ahead and fix that. Now, what I would recommend when you're getting started, you keep it very, very simple. You don't try and add multiple instructions. So what I could do here, for example, right now is I want to change the layout a bit. You can see here in the corner, we've got a little bit of a sharp edge and a curved corner. I could go in and I could tell it to fix that as well. I'm going to do that now, but the more instructions you give it, the higher the chance of it forgetting some of those instructions. So keep that in mind. The other thing I want to do is create something like this, where we've got like a bit of a drip effect. So we can see what we've clicked on is actually connected to that button. Here's a really good tip when you're building using multiple steps. Here I've put 3 steps. I would never go more than 3 steps because the AI can easily start to forget. And the last one is actually quite complicated. The reason it's complicated is it's hard for me to explain what that UI element looks like, how it actually works. So obviously we can go ahead and give it screenshots if it has context. But also if you tell the AI at the start that there's 3 steps that it needs to follow and then it needs to do all 3, and then you number each of the steps, you have a greater chance of it executing each step and not skipping information or skipping steps. Okay, so we're just going to go ahead and accept those changes. And now when we click on things, you can see it's fixed that numbering issue. Everything looks a lot cleaner, but obviously you can see we have an issue with how it's connecting between the two. So we're going to go ahead and take a screenshot and work on that last step. Now this is coming down to what I was saying earlier. Typically if you give it too many instructions, it will start to break, and the last instruction it won't do very well. So you want to limit the number of instructions that you give it to 1 or 2. Okay, this is one thing that's kind of useful, which I do sometimes, is go to ChatGPT, give it an image and ask it what that design style is. In this case, it's some sort of anchor indicator. So we're going to send that through and see if we get any better results. Now, obviously what we're building here is something very simple. This is just some simple UI user experience for a website. If you wanted to build a much more complicated app, for example, this is an app that I built in 5 hours, and I'm posting a full video on how I did it onto this YouTube channel very soon. You can see this is what the app actually looks like. It's fully integrated with a database, users can log in, and a whole load of other bits and pieces that they can do. If you want to learn how to do something like this, CodeSpring, which is my company, which helps you guys learn how to build MVPs using AI, is doing a live class to show you exactly how to do this. All you need to do is click the link down below this video and come along and register for the live class by clicking this button here. It is completely free to come along. You do not need to pay for anything. It's completely free. Well, it took a bit of tweaking, but in the end I told it to create this fine-tuning adjustment section where I could actually adjust the relative X, Y position, the size, and also the corner radius. And you can see now we've created something that looks a little bit cooler. Obviously I think it needs a little bit more work, but we're basically there. So that's exactly how I use AI to build any sort of application or landing page. If you would like to learn more on how to build your first MVP using AI, click the top link down below and come to CodeSpring's next live class by clicking this button on my website.